This QA feature allows you to explore data in your own words. Let's go ahead and add this and we'll see how this works. This is the table we're working with. It's a couple NBA players and their teams and states and whatnot. Just a couple records. And right off the bat, it gives you some suggested questions that you could ask. For example, show player details. And here's the full list. Again, this is all we have. It's one example. Maybe how many conferences are there? And it'll give you a number based on your data. So rather than talking about this, let's just jump right in and see an example. Who plays for the Lakers? And you can see it starts to auto-complete with different records from our data set. Here we have 2 people and it just shows up for us. Maybe we want to see a count. How many teams are in the Eastern Conference? 2. So even with the typo, it is giving us the right answers. Like we said, sometimes it may not make exact sense or match with what somebody would actually want to type. For example, I know this isn't going to give us an issue. How many players are on the Warriors? And it says we don't understand the question. And what you can do then is click on this and say define players, because it's saying we don't know what players means. So all you have to do is click on this. It's going to take you to this QA setup and very easily give you a wizard here to update this. We say we want this refer to player details, which is the only option we have in this case. That's the only table. But you could also add some more specific details if you wanted players to refer to something else. We're not going to get too far in the weeds. I think we're good with this, but let's just say save. And now that we've saved this, it's going to refresh and it's going to work for us. So we could say, what players are on the Lakers? And there it goes. It's showing result for Laker player details. What players are on the Warriors? Now it's picking it up. It's also, even with my typo, it's working. It can figure it out, which I think is pretty cool. Very easy to use. Let's say we want to create a certain type of visual. So far, we've really only seen the count as well as a table. But maybe we want it to be a specific type of visual, maybe a bar chart or a pie chart, something like that. What you can do is something like this. We'll say, what players are in the Western Conference? And then you can see here, it'll give you the different options. So let's say as matrix. And now quickly, it'll spin that up. We don't have the specific players. It's giving us this result. Again, this is where we could tweak this. Who plays in the Western Conference? Maybe we want to say by team. Kind of cool. Not exactly the right order here, but you can see how this is working. Maybe as bar chart. Let's see if we can get this to work how we want. Count of players on team as bar chart. There we go. This is something a little more interesting. So we can see it shows up here. Now, if we want to actually keep this on our visual and not just have it come and go, we click this icon right here, turn this QA result into a standard visual, and it just converted it. And that's it. We quickly were able to do that. And now we have this visual that we can work with and do whatever we want as we normally would. Let's quickly look at some of the other settings here that we have for QA. If we open this back up and go to the settings gear, there's a bunch of options that you can go through. There's a video here that can give you a little more details as well. Field synonyms, here's very similarly to what we did before where we went through that module to add player. You could add other words to a specific term or specific column. You can determine if you want this to be included in QA or not, or the entire table for that matter. They give you some suggested terms, it reads it and interprets it. This is really some behind the scenes machine learning going on for Power BI, which is pretty wild how far things have come. Review questions. Here you can go in and review some of the questions that maybe some other people have asked. Maybe you need to adjust some of your keywords or synonyms based on what people have submitted. Teach QA. Here you can go in and kind of do what we did before. Who plays for the Warriors? Get a preview and determine, does this make sense? Do we need to change some of these keywords? Things like that. Here are the terms that you've taught QA. So we can see this is what we went in and defined. If we were to go in here and add something else, let's just say first name, we add this guy. It'll add it to our list. And if we go to manage terms, now we see this here as well. And we can easily delete it if we want. Here you can add your own suggested questions, which would show up then here as one of the ones to get started. We'll do players in the Western Conference. Add, save, and now if we were to, it's going to prepare this, but what I'll do is open this up, and here we get our suggested ones here, and you can see it replaced the ones that were there by default. You'd have to go in and re-add some of those if you wanted, but you could add your own if you want to kind of nudge your audience to ask certain questions or think about the data in a certain way if you wanted. Let's look briefly at some of the best practices to optimize QA in Power BI. Obviously, we can see this requires a little bit of hand-holding to make sure it's right and to make sure some of the things are doing what you expect. Some of their suggestions are to add missing relationships. You can see here, for example, in this case, there's no relationships, so it makes that back-end engine, it makes it a little harder for it to know what things should be tied together, just like you would in any tabular model. You know, you want to make sure there is a connection, because remember, behind the scenes, it's all being processed as DAX, different DAX queries. So having these relationships is critical, just as it would be in really any model that you have, but especially for QA. Rename tables and columns. Again, it can only do as well as the information it has. So you want to make sure that the names of the tables and the columns match with how you want people to refer to them. Some of this probably should be handled up front in your data model, but if you need to change it at this level, you should probably do that. Similar story with data types, obviously. Data category. A lot of this, the dates and the geography columns, this is really helpful for the types of visuals you want it to return. By default, we saw a lot of them returned as tables. We had the one that returned as count. But if we have certain columns that are set to be dates or to be, let's say, more specifically geography, and then it can start to return as a map by default and be more interactive and more interesting for the users to see. Sort columns, all this stuff, really more handling metadata, making sure everything is cleaned up, ready to go, so that the information that's being passed to this QA engine makes the most sense and then therefore will give the best results. The last thing I'm going to point out here is a quick note on QA for live connections in Power BI. As it says here, live connection, oftentimes you'll need typically a gateway. And if you have a gateway, and if you're familiar with how gateways in Power BI work, there are some settings you need to configure so that things can pass through, and there's different levels of security on that. You'll see this setting option here for QA to turn it on, because as it's saying here, it has to understand that data and process it and store it in a different way. There also are some limitations. It says it's only available for SQL Server 2016 analysis services, at least at the time of this video. It's optimized to work with tabular data, not multidimensional. So if you have a multi-dimensional cube, not a tabular cube, you might be out of luck here. If this is something that fits your situation, take a look at this and a couple things to consider before it can just work straight out of the box. If you have any questions on this, or if you've used it, please leave a comment and be curious to see how other people have implemented this. And as always, thank you for watching, and I'll see you at the next video.